You came here for real stories about the woods, things that actually happen. I'm a park ranger, and I'm going to prove to you that the most beautiful places on Earth are also the most goddamn terrifying. What we see out there breaks the official logs and will haunt you long after the sun goes down. We're going deep. These are the 3 stories they cover up. Story 1, The Crying Mountain. This happened at Mount Rainier National Park, way up high in the late fall. Ranger Mark Jensen, a straight-up veteran with 2 decades of service, was doing a final solo patrol to check all the emergency beacons before the first heavy snowfall. It was a clear, sunny day, crisp but quiet. Mark had his patrol dog, a big German shepherd named Buster, with him. Buster was usually bomb-proof, nothing ever fazed him, a total professional. They were near the tree line, about 5 miles up. They were hiking near a small, frozen stream when Buster suddenly stopped, dead still. He whined, a sound Mark had never heard him make, and started looking frantically at the dense trees. Mark checked his surroundings, nothing but wind and pines. He tried to pull Buster forward, but the dog braced, shivering, and wouldn't move. Mark figured Buster saw a mountain goat or a small bear, a routine thing. He knelt down to calm the dog, and that's when he heard it, a faint, mechanical clicking sound coming from the base of a massive, ancient cedar tree. It sounded like something trying to turn a cheap clock gear. Mark let go of the dog. Buster immediately bolted, running full speed back down the trail toward the patrol truck. Mark was shocked. Buster had never abandoned him. Now alone, Mark felt the heavy silence press in. The clicking stopped. He heard a new sound, a faint, high-pitched wailing, like a woman crying, but the sound was too smooth, too perfect. It was coming from inside the cedar tree, which had no discernible opening. He cautiously approached the trunk, placing his hand on the thick bark. The moment he touched the tree, the sound became clearer, louder, and more distorted, not a woman crying, but a sound that was imitating crying, a horrifying, unnatural sound. He ripped his hand back, checked his radio. It was blinking rapidly, displaying a location ping, his location, but the coordinates were wrong. They showed him as being 200 feet below ground. He heard the clicking again, faster this time, and closer. Mark knew he had to get out of the sound's range, now. He turned to run, and that's when he saw a set of markings freshly scored into the bark of the cedar tree, a rough outline of a human face with an impossibly wide, grinning mouth. As he looked, the mouth seemed to stretch and deepen, and the horrific wailing sound intensified, coming directly from the tree's core. He didn't hesitate. He ran down the trail after his dog, his boots pounding the frozen ground. The sound didn't chase him, it just echoed and multiplied behind him, the wailing now mixed with the fast, frantic clicking sound. Mark ran until he reached his truck, finding Buster huddled under the front tire, shivering. He drove straight to the nearest station and filed a report about a malfunctioning beacon and aggressive wildlife that scared the dog. He conveniently left out the talking tree and the fake coordinates. Later that day, he went back with a small team to retrieve his gear. They found everything. But when they examined the cedar tree, they found no scratches. The bark was smooth. However, a small, circular, wooden children's whistle, clearly store-bought, was found buried deep in the soil at the base of the trunk. Mark quit 2 months later, just totally done. He couldn't stand the sight of trees. He told me that sometimes, when his smoke detector battery starts to die, making that tiny, rhythmic chirp sound, he hears the faint, high-pitched wail right after. He knows that whatever was in that cedar tree didn't need a mouth, it just needed to learn the sounds of the people around it. He now works in a cement warehouse. The continuous, loud noise of machines is the only thing that makes him feel safe. Before we dive back into the deep woods, if that first story already sent a chill down your spine, do me a huge favor and hit that like button. And while you're at it, subscribe to Horror Spot. You don't want to miss the secrets the Rangers are keeping, trust me. Story 2. The Den's Demand. This story comes from Ranger Sarah Jenkins, working alone in the remote high desert canyons of Big Bend National Park, Texas. It was the absolute dead of summer, scorching hot, and bone-dry. Sarah was a wildlife biology specialist. She was out tagging and tracking the migratory black bear population. Her patrol involved a long, lonely trek up into a series of caves and rocky dens. This particular day, she was checking a known den site, a shallow cave under a massive sandstone overhang. She figured it was just an empty cave, nothing much. She approached the den, scanning the entrance. She saw something unusual, a small, smooth stack of 7 perfect river stones piled neatly just outside the cave entrance. River stones don't belong in the desert. They had to have been carried up from the valley floor, which was miles away. Sarah immediately stopped. She knew bears don't stack rocks, neither do hikers, not that perfectly. It felt like a marker. She radioed in her location, just a routine check-in, keeping her voice casual. Her dispatcher confirmed the ping and signed off. She took 2 steps closer to the den. That's when she heard a low, resonant sound coming from inside the cave. It wasn't a growl, it was a deep, vibrating hum. It sounded less like an animal and more like a massive, empty shell being struck. She pointed her powerful tactical flashlight into the gloom. The hum stopped. She saw the interior of the cave was totally cleared out, no bedding, no scat, nothing. Except for one thing, a second stack of stones, this time 11 of them, sitting right in the deepest, darkest corner of the den. And as she watched, she swore she saw the top stone shiver. The humming sound returned, now louder, and she felt the vibration in her chest. Her radio on her hip suddenly started clicking rapidly, like Morse code, but the clicks weren't uniform, they were rhythmic, slow, demanding. She was being pinged. Sarah backed up slowly, keeping her eyes fixed on the den. The humming intensified, and the air around the cave entrance grew impossibly cold, even in the 110-degree desert heat. She knew the demand of the radio clicks, they matched the rhythm of the humming. It felt like whatever was inside the cave was demanding more stones. As she retreated, she saw a third stack begin to form, this time outside the den. One by one, small desert stones, no bigger than golf balls, were slowly being pushed up from the sand and stacking themselves into a tiny pyramid. She didn't wait to see how many stones it wanted. She turned and ran flat out down the canyon path, scrambling over the boulders. She didn't hear a chase, she only heard the deep, sickening humming sound fade slowly behind her, like the cave itself was sighing in disappointment. Sarah hiked 12 miles back to her truck, utterly exhausted and totes freaked out. She filed a report citing an extreme seismic anomaly in the area, which they dismissed. She never told anyone about the stacking stones or the humming. A week later, a survey team was sent up to the den to check for seismic activity. They found nothing. However, they did find Sarah's abandoned tracking kit near the cave entrance. The report noted that the kit's heavy aluminum case had been carefully arranged into a perfect, 3-foot-tall pyramid right where she left it. The case was untouched, but every single battery inside the kit was completely drained, totally dead. Sarah transferred to the East Coast, working a desk job in a densely populated national park where she could see traffic from her window. But she told me that whenever she has to count anything, coins, paperwork, supplies, she gets a terrifying, icy feeling in her stomach. Why? Because she said that whenever she finishes counting, she instinctively finds herself stacking the items into small pyramids. She knows that the cave didn't have a mouth, it had a demand, and that demand is still inside her head. Story 3, The View from Above. This happened at Glacier National Park, Montana, involving a young ranger named Elias Vance. Elias was working fire watch from a remote, old-school lookout tower, perched on a peak 6,000 feet up. He was a good kid, but totally green and loved the quiet solitude. His job was simple: spend a week up there, logging weather, and watching for smoke. It was early July, clear, hot days and perfect, star-studded nights. On his fourth night, Elias was running through his routine check of the panoramic windows around 2 a.m. He used his binoculars to sweep the moonlit valley below. That's when he saw it. Not an animal, not a light, but a pattern of movement. Down near the valley floor, where the tree line began, a series of trees seemed to be bending and swaying violently, one after the other, without wind. It was too fast, too rhythmic, like something large was tearing its way through the dense pines. He checked his anemometer, 0 wind. He told himself it was just a deer herd spooking, no big deal. He went back to his logbook, but 10 minutes later, he heard a sound, not outside, but inside the tower structure. A faint, low scratching noise coming from the wood paneling, right behind the internal staircase. He grabbed his sidearm, totally freaked out, and checked the staircase. Nothing. He returned to the window, sweeping the valley again. The movement in the tree line was still there, but now it was closer. Much closer. And faster. The trees were thrashing, snapping, creating a distinct, expanding circle of destruction that was heading straight for the lookout tower. He realized with a terrifying jolt that whatever was down there, it knew exactly where he was. He slammed his hand down on the radio transmission button, shouting, "Fire watch to Central. I have a major situation. Request immediate extraction." The radio stayed silent, but his receiver made a high-pitched whistle that burned his ear. Then, a slow, deep breath came through the static. The rhythmic thrashing stopped abruptly, maybe only 200 feet from the tower base. Elias ripped off his headset. He scrambled to grab his emergency supplies. He looked out the window one last time, desperate to see what he was dealing with. He didn't see a bear, or a cat, or anything that belonged to this world. He saw the trees directly below the tower, all perfectly still. But he noticed that the entire space between the trees, the deep shadow of the forest floor, was moving. Slowly, silently, the massive shadow began to rise upward like thick, black liquid, climbing the sheer tower legs. He couldn't see a shape or an outline, it was just a climbing, living absence of light. He jammed his escape rope through the window frame and rappelled down the opposite side, dropping 100 feet in seconds. Elias landed hard and ran until dawn, never looking back at the tower. He made it to the main station, completely broken, and told them the entire truth. They logged his incident as severe hallucination due to isolation and lack of sleep. They brought him back to the tower to retrieve his items. Everything was exactly as he left it. Except for the massive, double-paned glass window of the lookout tower, it was intact, not cracked, but in the exact center of the pane, there was a perfect, shallow, circular depression, almost like something huge had pressed its eye against the glass from the outside, applying immense pressure without breaking it. They wrote it off as a manufacturing defect. Elias now works security for a huge corporate building in Seattle. He avoids all windows. He refuses to even go on elevators with glass sides. But the worst part? Whenever he looks up at the ceiling of the office building, he feels the same cold dread. He knows that whatever was climbing that tower didn't need legs. And sometimes, when the fluorescent lights flicker above him, he swears he sees a faint, distorted, circular shadow expanding on the ceiling, silently observing him from the view above. He knows that thing didn't stay on the mountain, it just needed a new height to watch from. That's it, man. 3 more secrets that should have stayed buried in the wilderness. These hauntings are real, and they prove the woods are never truly empty. If these stories left you feeling that chill in your bones, then do us a huge favor, hit that like button. Sharing this video helps keep the Ranger secrets coming. And if you haven't yet, subscribe to Horror Spot, because the deep woods are always listening. For even more terrifying true tales, don't miss our last video, 3 Park Ranger horror stories that will keep you out of the woods. It's linked right here on the end screen and in the description. Trust me, you need both videos to sleep soundly tonight.